So today we're going to be talking about the principles of graphic design. The principles of graphic design are the building blocks to creating exceptional, wonderful, great designs that can transcend time. And I always say that in order for you to break the rules, you need to know them. Bend the rules only if you have learned them. If you look at the most famous logos, one thing you're going to realize is that all of these designers or the brains behind the designs understood the principles of graphic design. They understood how to make use of balance, how to make use of hierarchy, when to repeat elements across the design in order to draw focus to a particular element, how to use contrast, or when to use alignment. Is it centered aligned, left, right? We're going to get to that part. When to use proximity, white space, and emphasis in the design in order to communicate whatever it is the client wants or whatever it is they want. So without much ado, we're going to go straight to the very first principle of design, which is balance. So what is balance? Balance is all about stability. Balance is all about structure, creating visual weight in a design. When somebody comes up to you and gives you a flyer, you might not know that you're already taking note of the kind of design being used. Let's say somebody gives you a bland flyer. Will you really be interested in looking at the information that's there? I don't think you would. You will most likely be interested if they have used beautiful colors, maybe the images used are captivating. And that's because the brain behind the designs have mastered visual balance. Visual balance comes from arranging elements so that no section is heavier than the other. Mark you, there are certain compositions that a certain part of the design may appear heavier than the other, but a designer who has mastered how to use balance has actually implemented a category of balance which is asymmetry, and we're going to get to that. So how do you actually create balance with your designs? You can create balance using position, using size, using value, color, shape, or you could use texture in order to create balance. Now, there are three types of balance. We have symmetry, we have asymmetry, and we have radial balance. So symmetrical balance is all about distributing elements evenly. It's more like a mirror effect. So for example, if you take a paper and you divide the paper into two, after composing, you realize that the left part of the paper actually mirrors the right part of the paper. So that is symmetry in design. Another name for symmetrical balance is formal balance. Let's look at these two designs or these two compositions. So on the left, we have a movie poster. If you divide the poster on the left, which has a lot of word, into two, you realize that there is symmetry. The actor has been placed at the very center, the title or the caption at the top, and the Lord on the left, which is a type, balances the type on the right, which is war. So there is definitely symmetry in this design. The poster on the right is symmetrically balanced with color and the elements being used, specifically the people being used. So you see there is a man at the center, it could be a man or woman at the center, and it balances the people on the left. We have two people on the left, balances the two people on the right. Also, if you look carefully, the title, which is Rumspringa, has been spread wide to balance the width of the people below. So we have these people, which is the width of these people, balances the width of the title. So that is another form of balance being used in this design. The next is asymmetrical balance, and asymmetrical balance is simply the opposite of symmetry, uneven weight. It's about unevenly distributing visual elements in a design. If you want to draw attention to a particular point of your composition, or if you want to show a form of movement, then you can use asymmetrical balance. And you will see mostly in designs such as posters, where you have the creative freedom to play around with the design. So you can see this on posters, on album covers, you can see this in magazines, and it takes a really experienced professional to know how to best use asymmetrical balance in their designs. So on the right, we have asymmetrical balance. It's very typical. The weight on the right is heavier than that on the left. So this is a movie poster for Sherlock Holmes, and you see that the right side carries a face, and there is a pipe, but the pipe is actually at the center and divided in the middle. So the balance here is asymmetrical. The right side is heavier than the left side. The left side has more of white space, but the designer behind this actually carefully made use of asymmetry, and it's drawing my eyes to the right. My focus, the first thing I notice is the right. I see a face, or I see a profile of a man, then the pipe, then the title. Now the left is the Ant-Man movie poster, and it is very obvious that this is an asymmetrical design. The costume of the character Ant-Man is weighing a lot on the left as compared to the right. So you notice that the right is mainly white space, but they have the title here. So imagine if this title was placed at the top here. Will it still have the same effect of asymmetry? Yes, it will, but I don't think it will make sense. So the designer here was having in mind that the left was going to carry the main character, and the title of the movie was going to create some sort of balance, so we won't have a completely negative space on the right. So this is a very good example of balance. And we're going to the last, which is radial balance. So radial balance is very straightforward. The goal here is to draw your attention to a focal point from the center. So it's about evenly distributing visual weight from a center point of your composition. And you can see it in nature when you look at flowers. If it's taken from, I'm just going to use the term, the bird's eye view, you notice that flowers are kind of circularly structured, so from the center point outwardly. So these are other examples of a form of radial balance. So when you look at this, you see that this is the center point, and we have movement, showing us movement, and if you're looking from the top, the movement is going to the center here. So my eyes are drawn now to the center. The same thing here on the right. If you look at this, is a stairway, just like the left, this is a stairway, and you see that the movement is cyclical. So radial, it starts from a center point, which is here, and then goes out. Or if you want to look outwardly, it starts outwardly, then you look in the circle. So where are my eyes drawn to? My eyes are drawn to the center. So that is what radial balance is all about. Now we'll move to the next, which is proximity. Just like the name says, proximity, closeness, connection, relationship. So in design, you need to know how to make use of proximity. What exactly is proximity? Proximity is all about using visual elements. You can use colors, you can use size or scale in order to create a relationship or connection between similar elements in a design or in a composition. So I'm going to use this as an example. When you're walking on the street and you see two people dressed in the same attire, let me say, or maybe the same pattern, the same color, wearing almost the same shoes, what goes to your mind? Let's say it's a man and a woman, or they're moving wearing the same attire. What comes to your mind? Definitely, they might be a couple, or they might be siblings. If you see two little girls dressed in the same attire, obviously if they look alike, it will help that they are actually twins. But if they don't look alike, but they're wearing the same attire, what comes to your mind? Means that they must know each other. They could still be best friends, or they could still be people who have just decided to wear the same attire, but it shows that they definitely have a connection. So that proximity is very obvious by just looking at them. As a good designer, you need to know how to use different elements in order to show a connection within your design. This is very important, especially if you want to show that there's a relationship or a close relationship between two elements, or you want to make sure that there is a big difference between unrelated elements in your design.
When you look at the two magazine covers, what do you see? I'm going to pay attention to the actors. Let's say the magazine wants to write an article about an actor. It could be spatial, it could be an autobiography. What they will do is have the image of the picture of the actor, then the caption, that is the name of the actor, and maybe what the title of the article is going to be. On the left, we see Kerry Washington on the red with Taraji, and on the left, the issue is about Scandal is a TV series that was going on for a while. They made sure that they pay attention to proximity by placing every related item that has to do with the article relating to that specific actor real close to each other.
You can use proximity to tell a story or to guide a viewer's eye in order to show a connection or direct connection between two or more elements, or to show a disconnection between two or more elements. I'm going to use the example of a website, and I'm going to focus on a hero image or a slider. If you visit any website that has a hero image, they always have something like a caption, or they have a heading. And just below the heading, they might have a button, and that button is definitely connected to the message that they have put in the title. So let's say you want somebody to subscribe to a newsletter. What are you going to do? You need to tell them exactly what you need from them with the title. You put the title, then the button is definitely going to be an action. So subscribe to my newsletter in order to get daily updates on discounts or on the products in my store or in my shop. And the button below will tell you to click on subscribe. So there is proximity. Imagine if they put that particular title and they carry the button and place it somewhere further. It won't make any sense, and it will make it difficult for the user to understand what is actually required of them. Another good example of proximity is images and caption.
With images and caption, they seldom carry the caption and place it further away from the image. Most at times, images are always placed in close proximity with the captions.
The next we'll be talking about is alignment. And alignment is all about giving an ordered appearance, eliminating any form of untidiness. Let me give an example. When we go out, I'm still going to use the examples of always going out because that's what we do most of the time. When you go out and a place, or let's say you visit a restaurant and the restaurant looks untidy, it looks messy. Will you actually want to sit there and eat? I don't think so. Except purposely, obviously you will sit there, but if it looks untidy, your natural reaction is that you will not be attracted to see that. It will look kind of disgusting to you. But when you walk into a restaurant and everything is arranged, the tables are clean, no flies, the environment is just looking very comfortable for you. It's clean, it's ordered, it now draws you. You want to actually sit down and eat, and you might even be tempted, if in addition the food is good, you might be tempted to go there frequently to visit that establishment because it's bringing a calming effect to you. That is what alignment is in graphic design. It's all about giving an ordered appearance to images, to shapes, to blocks of text, and eliminating any form of untidiness in a composition. So there are different types of alignment. We have edge alignment and we have centered alignment. So with edge alignments, we've seen them, we've made use of them a lot in our school projects, in our personal projects. You will need to know when and how to align elements to the left, elements to the center, to the right, or to the bottom. And we have the center alignment, which could be aligned from the very center point or in the middle. So we have horizontally or vertically. So we're looking at an example of a magazine cover on the left and a poster on the right. So on the left, you see that I've made very good use of alignments. One thing I didn't mention was the fact that you could actually mix alignments. With the mixed alignment, you can align some items to the left, some to the right, and some to the center. First, looking at the magazine cover on the left, the book magazine cover on the left, you will notice that this group of text are aligned to the left. And here is another aspect of graphic design that comes in, which is proximity. So you see that I've placed related body of text in one group. So we have text aligned to the left, and I'm filling the shift and bringing up Rihanna. So this is another body of text that is aligned to the center. And this is simply, I would say, justified. Then we have Rihanna in the middle. Then we have the left poster, where you can see that the type has been aligned to the left. So the main type has been aligned to the left, and we have the subtype, which has been aligned to the right. So we have an example there where they have made use of mixed alignment. So not everything has been aligned either to the left, to the right, or to the center. This is another example of alignment being used poorly and used appropriately. So on the left, we have an appropriate use of alignment. It's clean, it's ordered. On the right, unordered, untidy, messy. So this is not how your design should look. This is how your design should look. Now, if your designs are going to look like this, then it should be done because you understood the principle of alignment and you are actually deciding to break the rules intentionally. It should not be because you do not know and you're just placing items randomly in your design. Now, the next is visual hierarchy. Visual hierarchy is very important. When you look at this slide, what does it do? The first thing your eyes are drawn to is the visual hierarchy title. And what I've done here is I've made use of color to create visual hierarchy. Visual hierarchy is about arranging and presenting design elements in a way that implies importance. So if you have a lot of information on a particular composition and you want a user or you want a viewer to be drawn to a specific item first, then you will need to know how to play around with visual hierarchy. How exactly can you achieve visual hierarchy? You can use bold fonts, you can use bright colors using a lot of contrast. You can use size. Maybe you can make an element bigger, which is the most important element bigger, and you can make the least important element smaller. You can use alignments to also create a form of hierarchical structure in your composition. So more colorful visuals will actually have a higher hierarchical attraction as compared to visuals that are quite dull. So if you make an image on a design big, obviously the viewer will be drawn to that bigger image. If the image is very colorful, the viewer's eyes are definitely going to be drawn to that. So we have two examples here. We have a book cover on the left and a UI element on the right. So we have the book cover here. When you look at this design, what do you notice first? Obviously, the title, the secret library. The secret library, and below we have a keyhole, and behind we have a shelf with books. So you see that they have made a clever use of visual hierarchy here because first, I've read the title. Secondly, I'm looking at an illustration actually depicting what the title is about. So even if I haven't read the book, at least I've been able to understand what exactly is the most important thing in this design, which is the title of the book. So if I've mastered the title of the book, maybe sometime I'll be able to remember, I might be able to recall that I had seen a book that was titled The Secret Library. On the right, we have an application, which is also part of user interface. And when you look at this design, what first draws your attention? Obviously the image. The image draws your attention. But now let's look at the actual size or the actual setting of hierarchical structure being used on this design. The first thing is the title, a curated playlist. The title is bold, it's big, and it's dark. And the contrast already plays in making sure that the curated playlist, which is the title, is popping from the background. The next thing are the images. The images are quite big and catchy. You notice that they've also made use of smaller text, which shows that it's not like the information is not important, but it's not as important as the first title, which is curated playlist. And you also notice that they made use of color. The least important information has a grayish color, while the most important information has a dark color. The next principle we are going to talk about is repetition. Repetition is all about reusing similar elements throughout your design. If you make good use of repetition in your design, it's going to actually strengthen your design. It's going to draw your attention to a specific section of your composition. So repetition is all about reusing similar elements throughout your design. It could be shapes, it could be color, it could be lines, it could be patterns that you've repeated in your design. And most of the times you may use repetition in order to create movements or to create a form of dynamic flow within your composition. Or if you want to create some sort of unity in your design, you're definitely going to know how to or learn how to make use of repetition. In web designs or web applications, you will see that there's a lot of repetition. Buttons are repeated across the design. Colors are repeated across the design. It could be the font sizes. Headings are going to have similar or the same sizes. All the headings, let me see, heading 1s are going to have the same sizes. Heading 6 are going to have the same sizes, and so on and so forth. Even the icons, the patterns of the icons being used are going to be similar. If we study this design, we notice that the colors are being repeated here. The icons are being repeated, even though they're different, but the shape of the icons are being repeated. So on the right, we have another good example of repetition. We see that elements on the right are being repeated on the left. The man bending forward on the left has been repeated on the right. The circle, half of the circle has been repeated on the right. So it is basically a mirror effect here. And if you recall our discussion about balance, you see that balance has been expressly used here. There is balance in color, balance in shape, balance in the illustrations, balance in the various elements on this design. And there is contrast, which we are going to be talking about next. There is contrast in the colors. You see the black is contrasting perfectly with the red background. The yellow is also contrasting perfectly with the red background. So contrast, what is contrast all about? Contrast is all about creating a difference between two or more elements in a composition or design. And contrast plays a very huge role, especially if you want to create a form of visual hierarchy, which we have already talked about. And why exactly will you want to use contrast, or why will you want to make good use of contrast in your design? In order to have an exceptional and outstanding design, you need to make good use of contrast, especially if you want to guide a viewer's attention to a specific or key element in your design. So if you want to also highlight important information in your design, then the best way for you to do that is to use contrast. This slide particularly already has a good form of contrast. The contrast first in size. So we see that the title or the caption contrast is the biggest and the supporting text is smaller but still legible. Another contrast is the contrast in color. If I used a lighter green color on the background, which is also lemon green, it wouldn't make a very good contrast. So white would contrast perfectly with the background, black would contrast perfectly with the background. So a darker color on the forefront and the background has a lighter color is a perfect way of using contrast. So this is a good example of contrast being used, which is also similar to the color that was used in the slide. There is a contrast between the woman at the forefront and the background. So my eyes are actually being guided first of all to the eye patch she's wearing. And this is another good example of negative or white space being used here, which we are still going to talk about. And visual hierarchy has also been used here. So we've made sure that the woman is the center of attention. iPod is actually on the right, but my eyes are definitely drawn to this, and that's why I also say interpreting a design is relative, because somebody else might have noticed this first, but my eyes are actually drawn to this first, then guided towards the iPod, which is then now drawing my attention to the right, which is the logo iPod. These are other good examples of contrast being used, and I'm going to focus mainly on contrast in the color steel, which is the blue, the light blue on the dark blue. You notice even the blend of the colors here, I've actually made proper use of contrast. The dark blue on the red background, the dark blue on the light blue background, and let's assume that this is cream color on the light blue background. So the contrast has been used here appropriately. The same thing on the right, but I'm going to focus on the image. So we have a contrast in size here. They've made the illustration of the astronauts bigger, and they've made the caption smaller. So this is where my eyes are drawn to first. Then my eyes are drawn to this. But if you realize there's some sort of a movement, which we are also going to talk about, because this is how my eyes are guided through. I look at the astronaut first. I look at the chain on his leg. Then my eyes are guided now to the title, which is The Lost Astronaut. And this is a movie poster. And we're moving to the next, which is negative space. So what is negative space all about? Have you looked at some designs and you see so many elements crammed into that design? Or let's say we look at a flyer. The flyer has 3 or 4 kind of fonts being used. It has several images being put. It has this, it has that patterns. Everything is just in the flyer to keep your eyes busy. You don't know exactly where you want to look at. This is where negative space comes in. There are times that you don't need a lot of elements in your design. You just need clear space. You need white space, and those are just other names for negative space. And what is negative space or white space all about? Negative space is all about leaving a blank space. I always use this example of drawing focus because that's actually the main importance of creating a composition or a design. Definitely you want to communicate something, and if you want to pass across a lot of information, you will need to draw focus to something. Even if you want to pass across just a simple information, you definitely still need to draw the viewer's attention to something specific in that design. And that is when you're going to make use of clear space. Clear space means breathing room. It gives your designs breathing room. It allows you to communicate effectively without cramping up so many elements in the design. It just makes the design look calm and cool and minimal. So as a designer, you need to learn how to use minimality when designing. Negative space can help you to highlight very important components in your design, like I earlier said. And we're going to look at these 2 examples. When you look at the image on the left, what do you see? Negative space. There's a lot of negative space. You expect that maybe somebody is going to be visible here. Like, why exactly did the designer decide to remove the person from this design? It made use of negative space and it still sent across the message, because actually if you look very closely, these are some hair strands here. It shows that he's hugging somebody. So on the right we have another example of white space, where here we actually see white being used. And I failed to mention that white space doesn't have to be entirely white. White space could be any color, but the goal is for you to leave breathing room around your design. So the design on the right is actually making use of white space, and it still draws your attention to the different elements in this design. First, we see the clown's nose and mouth, the scary teeth, then the title and the author of the book, which is Stephen King. So you definitely need to learn how to make use of white space in your design. We are now down to emphasis. And emphasis is all about creating or drawing interest in specific elements or part of your design. If you want a viewer to be drawn to a certain part of your design, you need to emphasize on that part. And how is it done? You can emphasize using contrast. You can emphasize using movement. You can emphasize using color. You can emphasize using shape. So if you've taken note, a lot of these principles of design are actually interchanging. most or all of the principles designs I've earlier mentioned, they're kind of connected. For example, if you want to create emphasis, you need to learn how to use contrast. You need to learn how to use movement. You need to learn how to use balance. So that if you want somebody's attention to be drawn to a specific part of your design, if you want a certain part to be your focal point, then you need to know how to emphasize. Scaling up something, scaling down something, using a brighter color, using a darker color, you need to learn how to use contrast in your design. Mastering emphasis is going to help your designs stand out and help you visually communicate appropriately to the right audience. We have two examples of emphasis being correctly used in a design. On the left, my eyes are drawn first to the title, not the entire title, where we have Backyard Astronomer's Guide. First, it's big. Second, it's bold. Third, the color is popping. The color is bright. And the other information that is not important has either been scaled down or using a neutral color or something that will not actually take the attention away from the main title. And on the right, we have another good example of emphasis being used. This is the album cover of the late Biggie, the late Notorious, and it is a very good example of emphasis being used. First, I've made use of white space, and the white space is already naturally making my eyes being drawn to two elements. The first is going to be the baby at the very center. The second is going to be the title, which is The Notorious Big, and the third is going to be Ready to Die. My eyes are drawn to the biggest element in the design, which to me is the baby. The second, the title or the caption, which is the name of the artist, and the third is the Ready to Die, which is the name of the album. So as a designer, you need to learn how to use emphasis to draw attention to certain aspects of your design. And that takes us to the last, which is movement. Movement is all about guiding, leading, guiding a viewer's eyes from a starting point to where you want them to actually focus on. It could be on several places in your design. It could be a main or a center point in your design. But the goal about movement is creating a story. Stories have beginnings and endings. So if you're working on your composition, you need to make sure that your composition has a story to tell. Playing around with the different visual elements, be it color, lines, images, shapes, typography, whatever it is you're deciding to use on your design or composition, you need to make sure that the viewer's eyes are being guided towards exactly what you want them to look at. Movement is all about creating motion on a static design. It should show as if there is some sort of movement. So when somebody takes a picture, and if their hands are lifted up and maybe their waist is turned to the left, you know that there's some sort of movement, but it's a picture. But it gives a story in your mind that this person was maybe dancing and they took a picture of him or her while the person was moving. And this is another good example of movement. This is a poster for Beyonce's concert. She isn't actually moving in the design, obviously, but the way she has posed shows that there is some sort of a movement. But my eyes are drawn to where her hand is. Her hand is lifted up to the right, and it takes me to her name being placed a layer behind her, and the title or the theme of the concert. I hope I'm using the right word there. The theme of the concert, which is I Am, and it's a world tour. Her hand has guided me towards her name, then towards the theme of the concert. So movement has definitely been used here to draw my attention to different parts of the design. This is another good use of movement being used in design, and this is specifically logo design. This example is drawn from the former logo of Formula One, which is a racing company based in the US. And even though their logo has been redesigned, this was a very good example because they played around, first of all, with the shapes being used. These pointy shapes pointing forwards is already showing or demonstrating some sort of movement. And the fact that I already mentioned that it is a racing company or tells you that this has been put to demonstrate or show some sort of forward movement, some sort of speed, some sort of swiftness. And another way that movement has been used here is the way in which the fonts have been tilted forward. So when you're running, you definitely run forward, you don't run backward. So this forward demonstration or illustration depicts some sort of movement in the design. So we've come to the end of Principles of Graphic Design. Hopefully you've been able to learn a few things that will help you to be able to create exceptional, groundbreaking designs irrespective of where you find yourself in the future, be it motion design, logo design, brand identity or collateral design, and promotional designs. As a graphic designer, please take out time. If this video wasn't enough, take out time to rewatch, find books, still visit if you have access to other resources, visit them. Make sure you master Principles of Graphic Design because this is going to be the base for you to create any design you want to work on, be it as an assignment or for a client. Like I said, or like I earlier mentioned, understanding the rules, learning the rules, mastering the rules will help you know exactly how you can break them in order to create exceptional or beautiful designs. I've been through the examples